Hi, everyone. My name is T. Welcome to my channel, Dementia Informer. This is a channel designed for caregivers, care partners, family members, friends, and all of those people who care about someone who is living with dementia and all of its various forms: Alzheimer's, Lewy body dementia, frontal temporal, and other forms of cognitive decline. I just wanted to do a quick introduction and test out the live stream to talk about what I'm going to cover every week on my channel. I am, to tell you a little bit about myself, a wife, a full-time employee, work 40 plus hours a week, a mom to a very spoiled dog, and I am the primary caregiver for a loved one who is living with dementia since a mini stroke in 2013. If you are watching this at some point in the future, it is currently March of 2020. So we are in the middle of a pandemic that's spanning the globe right now. And it is thought to particularly impact people over the age of 65 and with compromised immune systems and underlying medical problems, which unfortunately encompasses a lot of those people living with late onset dementia. Now, some of what I'm going to cover on my channel will be the differences between the different forms of dementia. What is dementia? What's the difference between late onset and early onset dementia? I'm going to be doing product reviews of helpful products, such as this automated pill dispenser. This one I particularly like because it hooks up to my smartphone and it talks. It's not just a beep, but it actually says it's time for your medications. And when the person flips the device over, it says thank you to let the person know that the pills have been dispensed. And this is currently set up for 2 weeks worth of medications, dispensing once in the morning, once in the evening. There are different configurations you can set up. And I've been through a few of these devices because they do give out after a period of time. I'm going to talk about security cameras, ways you can set up voice over IP phone services to restrict phone calls that are not in a known list of contacts. I myself at home for our home phone use a service called OOMA, OOMA, and it has a robo-killer spam filter built in. But I also have the device configured where if it is not a phone number that I have configured in advance, it automatically goes to voicemail. It does not ring the home phone at all. Of course, we have the concern with people with cognitive issues, people of advanced age, other issues falling victim to scams. So that was one thing I was particularly concerned about. We want to give people as they age as much freedom and as much autonomy as possible, but we also want to protect them and keep them safe from the people out in the world who would unfortunately prey on them. I'm going to talk about devices like an Apple Watch. I have an Apple Watch for my loved one. It has a built-in fall detection. It also keeps track of things like heart rate, and irregular heartbeats and things like that. Alarm systems for your home. We know that some people who suffer with sundowners have a tendency to wander as it becomes darker in the evening, and that is a safety concern. So myself, I have an alarm system at home. I use Simply Safe, but there are various other alarm systems where you can arm the doors and windows in your home have motion detectors so that if you're a heavy sleeper and you are sleeping in the house with someone who tends to wander, you can be alerted and advised when they attempt to leave the premises, which actually has come in handy at least twice in my own personal experience. Manual and physical barriers sometimes are useful as well. We're going to talk about barrier signs. I have one that spans stairwells or doorways that has a big red stop sign in the middle of it, and it is attached at either side with Velcro. Sometimes in the early to moderate stages of cognitive decline, physical barriers such as this will kind of stop the person who is living with dementia from proceeding into an unsafe area, perhaps a stairwell, perhaps going out the front door or another egress point for the safe area. I'm going to be doing some book reviews as well. A lot of people in the dementia caregiver community are aware of a book called The 36-Hour Day. There are various other well-researched, well-written books about those living with dementia, helpful tips, how to handle unexpected behaviors, what to expect with the progression of the disease. Unfortunately, no two people progress exactly the same through the disease or at the same rate. So you'll have some people who will stay in a sense of mild cognitive decline for years, and then there'll suddenly be a drop-off and new and strange and unexpected behaviors. And a lot of these books talk about the best ways to deal with that. There are also books on the best way to engage your loved one or the person you're caring for who's living with dementia to keep them socially engaged or mentally engaged. Ways to deal with behavioral issues that you may not be expecting, ways to keep yourself calm and to keep the person living with dementia calm, concerns about bathing and hygiene and outbursts and things of that nature. We're going to look into that as well, books that address that. We'll talk about things like power of attorney and other legal provisions that you can set up to care for your loved one once they reach a point where they perhaps can no longer safely drive, can no longer safely care for themselves, end-of-life decisions, power of attorney for medical care, power of attorney for financial issues. Now, I am not an attorney, to give a full disclaimer. I'm married to one, but I am not an attorney. I'm not a legal professional. You should, of course, seek the advice of a competent attorney, elder law attorney in this area with any concerns you have. But just to get you thinking about the kinds of things that you may need to set in place, and the earlier, the better. When the person is still competent to sign for things on their own, that's much better to have them do that then than later when you may have to have things like custodians involved and it becomes far more complicated. So the earlier, the better. What the different terms are when you're dealing with things like powers of attorney, what a principal is, what an agent is, what the difference is between a durable power of attorney and a springing power of attorney. I'm going to cover some of those things as well. Activities, ways to keep your loved one or the person you're caring for engaged. I'm going to address some of those things as well. And not everything is going to work for every person. Unfortunately, we don't know nearly enough about this disease in its various forms and the brain science. We do know that is a form of brain failure. So when you're explaining to people, hey, my loved one is not being difficult, they really can't do this. It's not that they're being obstreperous or difficult. They are in brain failure. Their brain is failing. And that is why perhaps one day they'll do something and it's what you want or what you expect. And the next day you may get a totally different reaction. So that very quickly is just the kind of topics I plan on covering on the channel. If you are living with or care for or love someone who is living with dementia or another form of cognitive decline as we age, I encourage you to tune in just to get some ideas, some feedback, to maybe feel like you're just not quite so alone, because a lot of the time it is a very lonely road to care for someone who is living with this disease, because people think they understand it. A lot of people think it's normal aging. It is not normal aging. As I said, it is brain failure. It cannot be helped. There are lots of people out there selling basically what I'd call snake oil that the research does not support, in saying, oh, yes, well, if you do this or you take this, it will cure dementia. The research just doesn't prove that to be true. Unfortunately, desperate times sometimes lead people to desperate measures. So we're going to talk about a lot of that. I am involved with my state legislature. I was last year. I don't know how much time I'll have this year for lobbying for more research, more funding for helping not only research for dementia and Alzheimer's and other forms of cognitive decline, but also to give respite care, funds for respite care for caregivers. This, unfortunately, financially destroys people. If you can get long-term care insurance, I would advise that as early as possible, even before a person starts to show signs of the disease, before they receive a diagnosis, because by the time they've received the diagnosis, it's kind of too late to request long-term care insurance. It is sometimes prohibitively expensive, but the costs of providing for someone to live in a care facility after they've been diagnosed, and once the decline progresses from the early stages to the median or the late stages, it is just unbelievably expensive and difficult for a caregiver or even a group of caregivers to attend to by themselves. So any help you can set up in advance is highly advised. Do your research, of course. You don't want to get taken in by scams, but it is definitely something you should look into earlier rather than later. So I didn't want this to be quite this long. I just wanted it to be a quick introduction to talk about what we're going to cover. I'm going to try and post once a week. It may be a short snippet, just things for you to think of. I know it's a very overwhelming topic, but I felt compelled to reach out and help other people who are in the situation I find myself in. And together, perhaps we can find a cure in our lifetime for this horrible and devastating cognitive disease. I hope you guys will tune in and join me. Until then, I hope you and your family members are well. Stay inside as much as possible. Wash those hands. Very important. And I will see you during my first broadcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Again, this is T, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.